This is Jacob's Algebra, Chapter 10, Lesson 8. This lesson is on factoring higher degree polynomials. So when you have higher degree polynomials, the first thing you need to do is factor out the greatest common factor if there is one other than 1. So if there is a common factor in all of the terms, go ahead and factor that out. See if what you have left fits the pattern for the difference of two squares or the square of a binomial. If that is not the case, then see if you can factor what's left into two binomials. So what we're going to do now is work on some examples. So let's look at number 4, which says find each of the following products. This is nothing that you haven't already done a million times. So part A is 5x minus 5, sorry, that's a horrible looking 5, times 2x plus 1. So 5x times 2x is 10x squared. 5x times the 1 is 5x. Negative 5 times 2x is negative 10x. And negative 5 times a positive 1 is negative 5. So we can combine our like terms in the middle, and we get 10x squared minus 5x minus 5. So that's going to be our answer for 4A. 4B is 5 times x minus 1 times 2x plus 1. So we can't just multiply all three of these together at the same time. When you multiply in pairs. So 5 times x minus 1 is 5x, and then 5 times the minus 1 is a negative 5. So we get 5x minus 5, and we're going to multiply that by 2x plus 1. Notice we ended up with what we started with in part A. The first factor in part A, 5 is a common factor. This that they showed us for part B just has the 5 pulled out. So you end up getting the same answer. So we will end up with 10x squared minus 5x minus 5. Now, just to show you it doesn't matter what order you do this in, when we have 5 times x minus 1 times 2x plus 1, we can choose to do the 5 last. So what I'm going to do is just write the 5 out here, and I'm going to multiply the other two pairs of parentheses. X times 2x is 2x squared. X times 1 is just an x. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. So what we have is 5 times 2x squared minus x, because we combined our like terms here, minus 1. Now we're going to multiply everything in the parentheses by 5. 5 times 2x squared is 10x squared. 5 times negative x is negative 5x. And 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. So you can see that we get the same answer. So this is number 4, which is just like number 9 that I assigned for homework. So the next one we're going to look at is number 5. Okay, part A is x times 2x times 3x. Okay, 2 times 3, that's 6. X times x times x, that is x cubed, so we get 6x cubed. Part B, we have x times 2x times x plus 3. So I'm going to multiply the x by the 2x first and get 2x squared. And then we multiply that by x plus 3. 2x squared times x, that is 2x cubed. 2x squared times 3, that is 3x squared. Okay, part C. We have x times x plus 2 times x plus 3. Okay, our x times x plus 2 is x squared plus 2x. And we got to put that in parentheses, times our x plus 3. Now, x squared times x is x cubed. X squared times 3 is 3x squared. 2x times x is 2x squared. And then 2x times 3 is 6x. So when we combine our like terms, we get x cubed plus 5x squared plus 6x. Then part D says, what property do all three polynomials have in common? What it's looking for here is that the degree of our part A was 3 because our highest power is the third power. The degree for our for part B is 3 because 3 is our highest power. The degree for part C is also 3. So for part D, we would say all are third degree. So that's what it's looking for. So that was number 5, which is just like number 10 that was assigned as homework. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is number 6. Number 6 says factor each of the following polynomials as completely as possible. So we will start with x cubed plus 10x. Is there a common factor? There is. Both of these terms have x, so I can factor that out, and we have x squared plus 10. And there's nothing else we can do with it. That's as far as it goes. So x times x squared plus 10 is factored out completely. Now let's try x to the 4th plus 10x cubed plus 24x squared. Okay, what is our greatest common factor for the coefficients? We've got 1, we have 10, we have 24. For the coefficients, all we have then is a 1. Now let's look at our variable. Our lowest degree for the variable is x squared, so we will pull out the x squared. And when we do that, we have x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times 5x will give us 10x cubed. X squared times 24 will give us 24x squared. Now we have to see if what's inside the parentheses is factorable. Well, it definitely does not fit the square of a binomial because while the first term in here is squared, 24 is not a square. So what we have to do now is see if there is some pair of factors of 24 that will add to 5. So the factors of 24 are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. Will any of these add up to 5? The answer to that is no. So this cannot be factored any further. So when we're looking at number 6 and we get, wait a minute, I copied this wrong. This is not a 5 in the middle. This is a 10 in the middle. Okay, so we have x squared plus 10x plus 24. We're looking for something that will add to 10. We do have a pair of factors that add to 10. So we have x squared times x plus 4 times x plus 6. And now that is completely factored. This was part C. Okay, let's take a look at part E. Part E says 6x to the 4th. I'm sorry, that is supposed to look like a 6. Plus 6x cubed plus 18x squared. Okay, looking at our numbers, we have a 6, we have a 6, and we have an 18. Greatest common factor for the coefficients is 6. Now, looking at our variables, we have an x to the 4th, an x cubed, and an x squared. Our smallest power is 2, so 6x squared. Now, what do we have to multiply by 6x squared to get 6x to the 4th? That will be x squared. What do we have to multiply by 6x squared to get 6x cubed? That would be just an x. What do we have to multiply by 6x squared to get 18x squared? That is a 3. Okay, so now we need to see if we can factor what's inside the parentheses. 3 is not a square, so it is definitely not the square of a binomial. So now we need to see, is there a pair of factors for 3 that will add to 1? Well, the only factors for 3 are 1 and 3. And you cannot make 1 and 3 add up to 1. So this is completely factored as it is. Okay, let's look at part F. No, actually, we're going to skip to part G. So we have 20x to the 4th minus 45x squared. Okay, so looking at our coefficients, we have 20 and we have 45. Well, 5 is a common factor for both of those. Looking at our powers, we have x to the 4th and x squared. Our lowest power is the square, so we're going to pull out 5x squared. 5x squared times what is 20x to the fourth? That would be, a 4x squared. 5x squared times what is 45x squared? That will be a 9. Now, if you look at these two numbers, you will notice they are both square numbers, and we are taking the difference of these square numbers. We can rewrite this as 5x squared times 2x, quantity squared, minus 3 squared. So this is a difference of two squares that we have in the parentheses, and we know how to factor those. So when you have a difference of two squares, you write your first term plus your last term, and then your first term minus your last term. So that is a completely factored form for number 6, part G. The last one we're going to do here is part I, which is x to the fourth minus 1. Can we factor that? We absolutely can. Notice that both of these numbers are squares. We can rewrite x to the fourth as x squared squared, and 1 is a square already. So this is a difference of two squares. We can write this as x squared plus 1 times x squared minus 1. But look at this, we still have a difference of two squares because x squared is a square and 1 is a square. So I'm going to copy down the x squared plus 1, and then I'm going to break this down into x plus 1 times x minus 1. Okay, so that was number 6, which is just like number 11 that I assigned as homework. Remember, for this one, you're going to need to factor as completely as possible. So once you think you're done factoring, check to see if you can factor anything further. Okay, the next part we're going to do is number 7. Number 7 says find the missing factor in each of the following equations. So you will be given something like 4x cubed plus x squared is equal to x squared times something. Well, what do we have to multiply by x squared to get 4x cubed? That would be 4x. What do we have to multiply by x squared to get x squared? That would be a 1. So 4x plus 1 is our answer. Let's do another one. We have 15x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to something times 5x minus 2. Now we've got a couple different ways we can try and solve it. One is to say, hey, what do I need to multiply by 5x to get 15x squared? Well, that would be 3x. And then what do I need to multiply by negative 2 to get a negative 2? Well, that would be a positive 1. And that actually gives us our answer. If you're uncertain about doing it that way, you can always draw your grid. So put your grid down and draw your lines. Okay, we know the top left box will be our 15x squared. The bottom right box will be our negative 2. 15 times 2 is 30. What are all our possible factors of 30? We've got 1 times 30. We have 2 times 15. We have 3 times 10. And we have 5 times 6. Now we need to see, since this is a negative, that means that we're going to subtract. So we're going to find the difference of our two factors, and we're going to end up with a 1. So which factors have a difference of 1? That would be 5 and 6. Which number do we want to be bigger, the positive or the negative? Well, this is a negative sign in front of our middle term, so we need it to be our bigger number to be negative. So we're going to write a negative 6 and a positive 5. And we're going to say 6x and 5x here because we know that our middle term has the x. So now, first row, greatest common factor is going to be 3x. Bottom row, greatest common factor is 1. First column, greatest common factor is 5x. Second column, greatest common factor is negative 2. Now we check to make sure that it actually multiplies out. 5x times 3x is 15x squared. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. 5x times 1 is 5x. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. It works. That means that we can factor this out as 3x plus 1 times 5x minus 2, which is what we have up here. So I will show you number 8 on the next video, on the part 2 video. This was number 7, which is just like number 12 that is assigned as homework.